If we think that finance define if you're successful or not, let's see that.
It seems that you are reading my thought. I was about to mention this, by the way.
Football players get paid more than doctors, so maybe that
I-
parent need to
I
think
do
about it
agree
one
with
more
that,
time.
yeah.
To me, I don't. If you ask me about any other memory about grade one, I don't remember anything. But this memory stayed with me because I was involved in this matter. I was involved with my education.
I don't want to say that all the private or international schools are applying this successfully, because we can also see the same issue in some of that.
They need to be informed that the language in the classroom only need to be in English, and this has to be addressed in early ages.
I am late, I'm behind my pacing, so I want to use that lesson in order to cover my curriculum.
Can you believe that I failed in English when I was in grade 4?
You're kidding me.
I'm serious.
Okay.
Do you know why I failed?
I'm so eager to know the reason.
Look it up if somebody
Hello. Education, a very deep term, a very deep concept that needs a lot of time to cover the main aspects of such a process. Nowadays, especially in the recent world of development, technology, education also exists and interrelate with the new improvement, the new aspects, and the new sides of applying technology into our daily life. So how important education is in order to build the skills of our community and societies. In our podcast today, we need to shed light on not only the concept of education, but when it comes to how do we apply education in both private and public communities, or especially the institutions, schools, universities, the educational environment. I would like to welcome my partner, Mrs. Rod, to this podcast. Thanks a lot for being a partner in this session, and hopefully we can shed light on the main aspects of such a deep idea. First of all, we need to start with the way that we can apply to cover most of educational aspects, which is the language, the way of communication. So basically, nowadays, as you can see, English is a priority for the majority of the schools, especially when it comes to private and international schools in our area. So the majority of these schools are applying English as a way of instruction, while when it comes to the public schools, English is only a curriculum, but not a language of communication or a language of instruction. So to what extent do you think this might affect the future plans, or let's say the goals of the students when it comes to joining universities or to study or to do the postgraduate or the undergraduate studies?
Honestly, like in the schools, as you mentioned, in the public schools, they only study English as a subject. They do not communicate in English, which is natural because the main language is Kurdish. But the gap is when they go to universities and when they apply for jobs, it's all in English. So the thing is, most of the colleges, universities here, the language is in English. And that's something that I don't really much understand. For public schools, it's hard because the shift is hard, moving from the public school, which all is Kurdish, and then suddenly all curriculum is in English. It's a very hard thing for them. So at this part, like family support can come in. They can get some English courses if only they take time to do that. But for the private schools, the transition is very, very easy because they're used to all of this. They're used to having lecture styles, for example. They're used to research information. They're used to not having a segregated schools, like boys and girls are together, for example. They're used to making mistakes when they have girls and boys. Also, when it's about finding jobs, in the schools, like private schools, the curriculum teaches them how to apply for jobs, how to make a cover letter, how to make a CV for themselves. And this is something really important for them because if you think about it, what's the purpose of the school? We're preparing the students for their lives. And if our students, if they're lacking these skills, how are they going to succeed? So I think the gap is for the public schools, they need to get like some courses, or maybe they need to be around some people that have a guidance to show them how to do it, because otherwise it's going to be hard. I've seen so many students struggling when they get into college because the language is hard for them, especially if they get into let's say that a scientific college. The terminologies are very, very hard for them. But when it comes to the private schools, it's easy. Especially, I've heard that. I don't know about this fact, honestly, but I've heard it from some colleagues of mine. They said that for med schools, they already have some seats available for the students who graduate from the private schools, because they say their curriculum, it's a similar curriculum that they're using in the med school for the first and the second levels that they're doing, which is amazing.
You have a point. Now, here, we want also to shed light on another point. Now, when it comes to public schools, that's what we faced as well, where students are. Even when it comes to teaching English as a subject, unfortunately, I mean, some of the instructors are still using the mother language in order to convey the main ideas and the aspects and the rules of that language. So in this case, we didn't give a chance or opportunity for the learners to apply English as a foreign or as a second language. While we already know that when it comes to private international schools, most of the subjects are being taught in English. When it comes to mathematics, science, even extracurricular subjects, except when it comes to the, let's say, the public curriculum, it comes to the mother languages or to the Islamic subjects or the religious, sorry, I don't mean Islamic in particular. But the good thing is that, I found one of the international schools here that even physical education, which is sport between two brackets, was being taught in English in particular. That's a very good way for the learners to get in touch with different terminologies, as you mentioned, that I know what kind of terms I use for scientific aspects. Okay, when it comes to football as a sport subject, I know what special terms that I can apply here. That's another point. Number two, also I can see that the majority of the families nowadays, they have an idea or goal that, why do I need to move my son or my daughter to one of the private or international schools? Because the language comes on top of the goals, that I want my son to improve his English first. And as you mentioned that, some universities might also specify a specific number of seats for those who only graduate in that schools, because they know that the educational background, the cultural background, or even the linguistic background will be way better. So what I personally would like to suggest is that public schools need, to highlight such a matter.
That's great.
For instance, when it comes to English in particular, we need to set a rule or policy that teachers of that subject cannot use any other language but English to explain the idea. The second thing is that, when it comes to the curriculum itself, we may find, good components of the curriculum. But probably, and this will be also tackled in the next question, when it comes to the methodology of teaching that curriculum. Now, why do I have to focus on only one part of the language and neglect the other parts? Why, for example, do I need to focus on teaching the grammatical aspects and cancel the communicational aspects? That's another point that we need also to tackle, and it's a critical point. So what do you think of that?
I think everything is a habit. For example, the teachers, they're used to explain the English subject in Kurdish because that's what other students have been informed or introduced to. We're supposed to do this in early ages. So let's just say KG or maybe grade 1. Teachers supposed to only be explaining English to make it sound like very nature, that this is what's supposed to be like. And so it would go on for grade 2 and 3 and above. But if the first grade teacher is explaining all in Kurdish, and then the second teacher who was teaching them in grade 2, if they started speaking in English, that would be somehow weird for the students because they've not been introduced to this. So I think in order for us to solve this problem, we have to start working on ourselves, and teachers need to be given the expectations that how their lesson's supposed to be like, and they need the I don't know who's responsible on monitoring the teachers while they're doing their lessons in English, but they need to be informed that the language in the classroom only need to be in English, and this has to be addressed in early ages. Everything that you want to fix as a let's just talk about curriculum. You have to start from early ages. If you establish that, the students are just going to go with the flow. They're going to learn that this is English class, we only speak in English. This is the math class, we only deal with numbers.
I see. Now, you asked a very good question, that who is responsible to follow up with that. Now, when it comes to the public school, we already know that there are a specific number of supervisors who usually pay regular visits to the public school in order to follow up with the procedures and the policies and how much teachers are following up with these steps, which is something good, by the way. It means that, yes, we want to check, we want to coordinate, we want to help and support. But unfortunately, this point is not being tackled. Now, I personally think that the role of the supervisor here is not to follow up with applying the main policies in the place, but also to check, especially when it comes to visiting the classes or attending the lessons. In addition to checking the lesson plan of that teacher, check the way that the teacher is applying or use to convey the message or to give that lesson. So I can also fix this issue by setting a policy that English teachers, or let's say language teachers in particular, have to use that language in particular when it comes to teaching that subject.
It should be
and
like that.
do not use any other language instead. That will give a kind of, let's say, chances to plant the seeds of confidence within the
Exactly.
students. Now, you give a chance for your students to talk to you using English or ask you questions in English as well. Now, see, for example, in Duhok, for instance, the number of the language institutes is being increased. And for me, the reason behind that is that the majority of the learners was to improve this aspect in particular. Okay. And from time to time, you may find a number of public school students who enroll in some language courses because I cannot improve my language at school. And I came here in order to get your support. All right, that is something good. That's something wonderful. But also, school is the first learning environment that I should think of to give me the needed support. All right. Now, we agreed on this point that, yes, English must be highlighted as a way of communication because nowadays everything is based on that language, especially when it comes to dealing with technology, studying in different universities, getting scholarships, writing emails, sending messages, whatever. Teaching styles. Now, this is another point, and it's interrelated with the one that we mentioned before. When it comes to a sort of comparison between public and private teaching ways, we may find a kind of gaps between the methodologies and the teaching styles. Now, for instance, we know that in a public school, in, let's say, one of the lessons, whether it's English or science or math or whatever, the duration of that lesson will be 40 or 45 minutes. That's what I know.
It's similar for both schools, private and public schools.
Great. But don't you think that, I mean, when it comes to a public school lesson, the majority of the minutes will be spent by the teacher or the instructor, him or herself, in order to shed light on the main aspects of the subject. While we already know that one of the new methods of teaching is that to give a chance for the students to share between two brackets, that is called the student-centered approach. And the good thing is that I heard from some public school teachers that the Ministry of Education starting giving relevant courses on training teachers how to apply this approach. But still, we cannot see a kind of positive consequences based on that. So to what extent do you think that the teaching styles, when it comes to both private and public, is influential or effective enough to help and support students when it comes to learning?
If you think about public schools, most of the public schools, their teaching style, teacher talks, student listen, they write notes, and then They memorize what they've written, and then they prepare themselves for the exam. And that's how the process goes. While for private schools, that's not how it works. A teacher acts like a facilitator. A teacher can, teachers in the private schools know that the attention span or the concentration span for the private students, I mean, for the students in general, it's so short, they lose you. Immediately when they think that the lesson is becoming boring, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to be thinking about every single thing that they see in front of them, maybe the light, maybe the whiteboard. They're not going to think about what you're saying. The only thing that they see is blah, 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 blah. And that's something that a lot of teachers need to know. So limiting the teacher talk time, it's very important. And for me, I remember when I was in first grade, I remember we had a lesson. It's crazy. I remember it because we did it. It wasn't just, I had like from, let's just say from grade 1 up until grade 12 in college days. I have had so many lessons, uncountable lessons, but the ones that I remember are the lessons that I was involved in them.
Definitely.
It wasn't the lessons that only the teacher was talking the whole time. If you tell me what the teacher was saying to me, I don't even know. But the lessons that were based on projects and presentations or maybe debating, these were the lessons that I enjoyed the most. These were the lessons that I built my knowledge. These were the lessons that I applied in my real life. And that's how all the lessons are supposed to be like. So if you're going to ask me if which one is more effective as a long run, I would say the lessons that the students are the center of their learning. The students are leading their own learning. I was giving an example here. When I was in grade 1, and it's crazy, because I remember this was like probably 25 years ago. I'm not really much sure about the number. I remember the teacher gave us a spelling test.
Okay.
And the teacher asked us to correct each other's paper. Mm-hmm. To me, I don't. If you ask me about any other memory about grade 1, I don't remember anything. But this memory stayed with me because I was involved in this matter. I was involved with my education. I get to see what my friends wrote on their papers. I get to correct their mistakes. So my point here is that teachers need to give the students to build their knowledge. Give them time to ask questions. Give them time to ask each other. By the way, students learn more from their friends than they learn from their teachers.
I do agree with
They
this.
listen more to their friends. They listen more to the people that are around their age. They even do what they do because they see each other cool. They all want to be the cool people. So if you want your students to really benefit from your lessons, do it once. Try to have the students work on their own. I'm not saying that the teacher should not be doing anything. That's not what it is, but the teacher need to prepare like some sort of project or maybe like any activities that the students need to work on their own or as a group. And then you'll be surprised how much your students know, and you'll be surprised how much when they're talking, you can tell like if the students know more than the student. And once they're talking, if even if there's one student who doesn't know much about that topic, just by listening to his friends, will know so much about it. And there's a quote that goes with this. I'm not really much sure, but I think Benjamin Franklin has said that. It says,
And what did he say?
tell me and I might remember.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Tell me and I might
It
remember.
says, show me and I
may
forget.
remember. Yes.
Tell me and I might remember.
Involve me.
Involve me and I
will learn.
Yes.
Yeah. So involve your students. If you want your student to succeed, involve them. Involve them in their education. Don't just tell them, go do page X. I remember in my time, the teacher would tell us, page 4 and 5 is your homework. Go study at home, and tomorrow you're just going to come and close your books and let's test your memory, basically. That's how it was like. So if you think about it, now the world is developing so fast. Mm-hmm. For example, if I'm a kid let's just pretend that I'm a student now. I go back home, I have a tablet, I get to see everything I have at home. I have all the tools. My lifestyle is perfect. But when I go to school, everything is so boring. Will I be interested in my lessons? I don't think so. So my point here is that the world needs to revolve as well. The schools here, the public schools, they need to step up and they need to do more interesting things, from having more resources or even giving their teachers more professional development on how to create more relationship with your with your students, how to be close to them, how to understand them more. It's not just about doing your lecture and leaving the classroom, or ask them questions about XYZ and giving them pluses or minuses.
Definitely.
No, it's not. That's not how it's supposed to be. The whole purpose of education is to improve a nation. We're here, we want the best nation. And how can
Exactly.
we create a best nation? It's by giving them the best education.
It's about, I mean, building the, let's say, the new community to be ambitious, to be good thinkers, to plan well for their future. You mentioned something very good, is that dealing with memorization or giving them instructions early. Now, I remember, as another example of one of the successful teachers that I dealt with, I mean, he was trying his best also to involve students in the process of teaching and learning. One day we had a lesson, I remember it was about Arabic language. And after explaining the topic for only 10 minutes, he asked students that who can also play the role of the teacher to re-explain the topic for your friends, and I'll give you the chance to ask them questions, testing them, let them participate. And you know, doing such a thing for grade 7 students was an achievement, that when you go on the stage, using the blackboard at that time, using the chalk, trying to share questions with the students, listening to them, correcting them, for me, that was a very good way, as I mentioned, to plant the seeds of self-esteem or self-confidence. So I don't want to say that all the private or international schools are applying this successfully, because we can also see the same issue in some of that. But what we want to focus is that we need to really and actually and practically and successfully apply the student-centered approach. That the teacher will use only 10 or let's say 15 minutes of the total duration of the lesson, while the rest of the time will be given to students. You can, as we usually know, divide the classroom into various groups, planning for some activities and ask them to check for each other, correcting for each other, sharing ideas, exchange ideas, think, pair and share, head together. Those are different ways to, or different techniques that we can apply to get it done successfully. And we don't want to forget that having a 45-minute lesson of TTT, that is teacher talking time, will never be beneficial. Some teachers might use this justification that, okay, but I mean, the curriculum is too long and too much, and I don't have enough time to cover that if I do that. I'm sorry, but it's about misplanning. If an instructor or a facilitator, I mean the teacher, I usually prefer to call the teacher as a facilitator, right? Because when it comes to teacher, I will only remember that it is someone who will stand in front of me, use all the time, speak most of the time, and I have just to keep listening to him or her and write notes. But let's agree that it is a facilitator that will introduce the ways for me, and then I will get the lead to start participating and working. So the role of the facilitator is to plan well in advance before you join your lesson. If you have a good or well-prepared plan that focuses on the practical session, then definitely you will cover your curriculum successfully and your students will learn a lot.
Definitely.
So the methodologies or the methods that we need to apply must be a way that can give the chance to the students to participate, share, exchange, and also lead the session. I remember that one of the educational programs, which is the IB, the International Baccalaureate, also give a chance for students to, share their ideas on a poster that usually the facilitator put on the board. It's called burning questions. Okay. You as a facilitator, you can specify a period of your duration of your lesson in order to check those questions. And also you can, instead of being the one who answered these questions, why don't you give the chance to the others to do that way? So the practical side is very important, and don't forget that the student is there to learn from you, and also you help him or her to get the chance to build his self-esteem or self-confidence. Curriculum, that's another point that we need to jump into. Now, when it comes to having a beneficial or an influential curriculum, we know that the curriculum that most of the public schools are using is a good curriculum, is a good way to shed lights on the new, updated, or developed, improvements in our community society. But still, don't you think, for example, that the curriculum that is being used by private international schools is a way more practical than the one that we're applying in public schools? I really need your idea on this aspect.
I don't think so, honestly, because most of the times the curriculum really much, it tells you, you have the teacher's manual, it tells you you can do this activity.
Okay.
And it depends on you as a teacher if you want to do it or not. You think about your students, if they're willing to do it or not. You think about how overcrowded your class is, and you think about the time. Will I be covering my material on time from cover to cover, of course? But I don't think it's only the curriculum. If you have a good teacher who's who's a well educator, who knows what to do, and if you have students who can put effort in their lessons, you can, and you have a good curriculum, of course, you can create whatever you want. So it's not about the international curriculum. Yes, international curriculums, it teaches you how to think internationally, and it gives you international informations. But when it comes to strategies, if you give me a pencil and tell me, give a class about a pencil, if I'm a creative teacher, I can come up with hundreds of strategies on how to teach the students about a
Definitely.
pencil. I don't need to have an international curriculum in order for me to teach it well. So I don't think it's a curriculum. I don't think it's an international curriculum that defines if it's going to be successful or not. You just need a good teacher with students that are willing to do in order for them to succeed, and you just need to have a topic, basically.
Okay, so you want to say that it's not the curriculum itself to be the big obstacle in order to achieve the points. It's
Not at all.
the ways that we apply the curriculum itself. And as you mentioned, the successful teachers or facilitators. So what are the good ways in order to have those successful facilitators or teachers? Basically, I can see that this is the responsibility of the educational institutions, whether it's public or private, that we can engage or enroll the majority of the teaching staff in ongoing workshops and training programs in order to develop and get a kind of being up to date with the new methods of teaching. Don't you think that, we really need to focus on building both, the community of the teachers and the students at the same time, in order to help and support the teachers to apply new practical ways to apply the curriculum that he or she is supposed to deal with. So the curriculum is not that big obstacle, but at the same time, we should bear in mind that the curriculum also should align with the new updates and the improvements of our daily life activities that we have. And also, when it comes to the language, how can we relate, the language to the curriculum itself? Do you think is it necessary, to teach, each curriculum in a specific language, or it could be done in various levels of languages? I'll give you an example. Now, for instance, in public schools, we are teaching math or science using our mother language. Why don't we shift into using English when it comes to teaching these curriculum?
I don't think we should have all the lessons in public school explaining in English, because if you think about it, even in America, they still have public schools and private schools, and both are taught in English. Their purpose here is not only English. So what we do in the private schools, it's not just we're teaching them how to speak in English. That's not the whole point. In order for you to be smart, it's not that you have to speak English so in order for you to look smart. That's not the point. And I think that our schools, the public schools, need to preserve the mother language, the Kurdish language. We're not supposed to be skipping anything. We don't even want that. But the thing that we need to work on is the teacher, getting more trained teachers. We can do exchanging programs. We can have public school teachers visiting private schools and see how it's like, and having vice versa, private schools visiting the public schools, and they can both share their experiences and see what they can have their own let's say trainings. So if we have one teacher from the public school visiting the private schools, once they're back, they can give their teachers a training about what they've learned. And so what we're lacking here, honestly, what I think is that the teachers need to be more trained about the new strategies that are used in the classroom, how to make your student the center of their learning. That's what we're lacking. Our problem is not like, oh, you only need to be speaking English in order for you to look smart. No, that's not the case. Our case is that we just want the students to focus on their learning and to actually understand what they're learning. So I think intensive training is required, even for us. If we work in the private schools, a lot of times we have a lot of professional developments, and a lot of times, for me, I speak about myself. A lot of times when I enter the professional developments, I know the topics. I've been there. I've heard it. But to me, I don't get annoyed at all. To me, I'm like, okay, that was just a refreshment for my memory. That's just something that I need to probably, maybe I've forgotten some points about this. Let me just try to work more on the points that were mentioned today. Yes, because yeah, we get caught up by working every single day. We think we know the best, but sometimes when you, even like this podcast, a lot of people think that they think about something, but what we're doing here is that maybe we're trying to change some people's mind. Maybe some people already know, but we're giving them extra knowledge about what's happening. So professional developments are the keys, and I truly, truly support having private and public teachers visiting each other's school and sharing the experiences.
That's a very good point. So before I try to say my ideas concerning that one, I just want to get back to the first point that we started with, because, I also agree with you. Yes, it's not the problem with the language, it's the way that we apply the curriculum itself. I don't think that, for example, if the curriculum will be in English, then it will be taught successfully, or students will learn that better. Since we live in Kurdistan, so mother language should be on top of everything.
Correct.
And, that's our heritage. That's our mother language. That's our identity. But I see that for the time being, some of the families, probably they have a wrong viewpoint that, well, I'll send my son or my daughter to a private school or international school is only because the curriculum is being taught in English. And for me, that is a mistake. That's a wrong viewpoint. The matter is that we should care about our mother language first, and for sure, I can improve any other languages dealing with different ways. For example, joining courses, doing some self-education. There is a plenty of ways in order to achieve that. Number two, now you mentioned something about professional development, and that is something very important, and I hope that we can convey a message to the relevant staff of the Directorate of Education, the public schools administration, and also the private ones that, all right, why don't you try to coordinate? Because our goal is to improve the facilitators or the teachers, as I mentioned. So having a kind of exchange programs, that will be a wonderful idea in order to support all of the teachers to get onto the point that we need our teachers to be. Number two is that nowadays we are living in the world of technology, and it's something easy to get those professional development sessions. Now I can sit at home and I can also get involved in different sessions, whether it's a free of charge or not, but there is also a plenty of chance for me to develop and get up to date with that one. So hopefully the ones who are watching this broadcast, especially the teachers, that hopefully they can follow this. They can get as a tip, as an advice, that it is a very good opportunity for you to develop. It's not a way that I now started my job as a teacher and that's it. Now I can do things successfully. No, we are still learners at the same time.
Correct.
All right. Now, there's another point that also help education to be on the ongoing way of improvement when it comes to both, teaching and learning. But our focus is on the learning ways and the students, One of the APLs, or the approaches to learning, that's how I know it's called around the world, is having the relevant facilities in relevant teaching or educational institutions. What I mean by that is that we may think of the science labs, art rooms, music rooms, and even special rooms for the physical education. For me personally, this will be another good way to plan for applying your curriculum successfully, because when you focus on the practical aspect of teaching any subject, that will really help you to achieve most of your objectives in a good way. So to what extent do you think that you are satisfied with the extracurricular activities or the facilities that we have in both of the types of schools that we're talking about, private and public?
Facilities and the services that any educational institutions provide for the students, it's very, very important, because think about it. In the public schools, a teacher can do a chemistry lesson. The teacher, let's just visualize this scenario. The teacher is writing on the whiteboard, this chemical. If you mix it with this chemical, this is the combination that you get. But if you have labs, students do not need to look at the whiteboard and be like, okay, let me write this note down. Students can actually participate and start mixing those chemicals and see what's going to happen. And that's something that we discussed before. They're never going to forget. So having things that the students can have on, that we call it hands-on, it's very important. This is for labs, for example, we're talking. Students learn when they research. Having libraries is really important.
That's a very important point. Good. You shift your mind to something else. We're going to talk about that. Sorry for interrupting.
It's okay. There's so many things like lighting, for example. If the lighting is dim and I cannot see, the whole lesson, I'm not listening to you. Whatever my lesson is, I'm not going to listen. If my feet are cold and there's no heater inside, I'm not going to listen to the teacher.
That will affect, definitely.
All of these factors affect on the student's attention. So if the student is not feeling comfortable enough to succeed in the lesson, they're just going to close their minds and they're going to be in the classroom physically, but mentally they're not going to be there. So most of the private schools, as we know, they have smart boards. So a student, once they, for example, they want to listen to something. And by the way, let's talk about learning needs. You know that. We both know that students have different learning needs. So they have learning styles, Some students learn when they see. Some students learn when they hear. Some students learn when they read. If you are in a classroom and you're teaching, you're just talking, and the students is a type that actually when they learn when they see, how are you going to have that? So we're talking about different topics here.
Sure.
So that's why lesson planning is important. When you're supposed to have in your lesson plans, you're supposed to have different things that tackles the student's attention. So that, because you want to make sure that all your students understand what you're explaining, you want to have a mixture of like pictures, mixtures of numbers. Some students learn by looking at numbers, by the way, believe it or not. Some students, they're self-taught. I'm someone who's self-taught. When I read something, that's when I understand. I may not be an auditory person, so when I hear some stuff, my brain is like blah, blah, blah. That's how most of the people are wired. Like every person is different than the other. So having different facilities in the classroom, it's completely it's completely well for students' achievement. If you want your lessons to work well, you're supposed to have all these equipments and resources in the classroom. So, and you mentioned PE room, for example.
Yes.
Um, Most of the public schools, I think they go outside, and most of the public school actually, they consider PE as a free class, or maybe art lesson as a free class.
Probably, sorry for interrupting you, but most of the public schools use the same playground in order to apply the sport activities. While I think that we should have specified or designated areas for such activities, like
It's
I mean,
supposed to
even
be
a
like
small
that.
stadium or a field to apply that one.
It
Sorry
should
for
be.
interrupting again.
It's okay. It
Yeah.
should be like that.
Exactly.
And honestly, these things are not for comfort. These things do improve learning.
Good. You remind me with this point that because some of let's say the interested people in such a point say, okay, but this might only lead to having the needed comfort for the students. As you mentioned, that if I feel that I'm cold, I cannot then pay attention to you well. But personally, I do agree with this. It's not a matter of having kind of comfortable environment, but it also leads to kind of what improving their academic achievement. Okay. See this example, for instance.
Let me ask you this question now.
Please go
I may
ahead.
interrupt you.
Yeah.
In private schools, since we both work in private schools, we're both are talking about how developed the schools are in Western countries. What do you think? Mention one thing that is missing from the private schools that we have here. We think that we have it all, but we might also have some
Good.
things that are missing. So what do you think we're
Good.
missing?
I mean, it seems that you are reading my thought. I was about to mention this, by the way. See, for instance, I mean, the majority of the people think that when it comes to facilities, I will only think of the extracurricular activities. For example, art room, music room, or let's say scientific lab. Okay, what about languages? What about having a language lab in my school? Now, I myself, I'm sorry, I haven't seen this in all of the private schools that we have here.
That's
A
right.
language lab through which that we can also teach students that how can you apply the correct phonological aspects of dealing with certain accents. Okay, whether it's American or British or. I'm talking about English because that's my specialized field. And I teach phonology or phonological aspects to my students. Now, it's really ineffective or not that effective when it comes to using the theories only or some examples that are written on the board to show the students that how do you pronounce that one. Okay, why don't they join a specific language lab and using the headphones in order to listen? Number two, having virtual meetings with different schools around the world.
Why not?
That will also give them a kind of good chance to exchange their thoughts and ideas. For me, that is one of the most important missing points in both, private and public schools. Number two, if I want also to make a comparison with that, when it comes to facilities, for instance, that's a negative point, and I'm sorry to say that. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of those who follow this podcast or they watch it would agree with that. This is an issue that we find in the majority of the public schools, that such practical lessons, art and music, sometimes are being neglected or cancelled, or third say that, but they're being used by
Other
other
teachers sometimes.
teachers, other subjects.
They want to catch up with their lessons because
And the
they must wanna
justification for
know.
that is that, well, I am late, I'm behind my pacing, so I want to use that lesson in order to cover my curriculum. You don't know that you are committing a big mistake.
The students need
The
those lessons.
music lesson is being selected, is being designed, is being, nominated to improve the taste of our learners. The art lesson is being there to improve the ability, the capability. Sometimes you may discover some talented students in order to support and help them. Then why I'm trying to neglect that one? In this case, you are telling the students that, okay, then let's focus a lot on the scientific aspects and let's neglect the art aspect. For me, that is another mistake that
Definitely.
the majority of public school principals and especially the relevant supervisors need to focus on. Facilities are needed. Extracurricular activities are needed.
Definitely.
But first of all, remember that those lessons are also included in the, I don't know what they call it, exam report, whatever. I have to evaluate my students well in those subjects when it comes to having a kind of effective educational environment. So, unfortunately, this is one of the issues that the public schools are dealing with. Private schools are a way better when it comes to teaching such subject, but again, we need to think of the ways of dealing with such, subjects. PE, art, music, performing arts, for example. See, I'll give you another example that I heard one day when I was working one of the international schools. And imagine that comment came from one of the parent who is a doctor.
Okay.
I was teaching performing arts. It's a drama between two brackets, okay?
Okay.
And it seems that we discover that we have some talent in students. They have good ways, of performing. They can also be on stage and apply the script. So I posted one of the photos of those students, doing a special pantomime scene. The next day, we received a visit from his parents saying that, sorry, but I don't want my son to be included in such activities. I really want him to focus on the scientific subjects, mathematics, English, because I want him to be a doctor in the future. So he wants to tell me that, please do not include him in the, don't let him focus on such a subject. And that was a big shock for me. If that's the mentality of one of the parents, then how can we think of improving our new generation? Okay, the purpose behind that is that in addition to improving their performing abilities, but imagine that we are helping them to improve their communication skills.
Exactly.
I'm trying to plant the seeds of self-confidence as well. So I'm sorry, but some parents need to also think of the ways that we are dealing with in order to help their children to improve. It's not about only focusing on that subject. It has a lot of interrelated ideas.
Does that mean that if you're a doctor, you're not supposed to be talented in some other thing? Like if you're a doctor, you're not supposed to be a musician, for example?
That's a wrong idea. I know a lot of, famous musicians around the world, but they haven't studied music academically. They are talented. I know one of the flute players, but he's a wonderful neurologist. Imagine he's a doctor, but at the same time, he never neglected such an aspect, right? Also, I do remember that there was a story that I read. A plastic surgery doctor, he was one of the well-known in this aspect. But whenever it comes to study a case, you know what does he do? He tries to play on one of the classical symphonies. And he tries just to listen to that and think of this case, that how can I manage it? That was really effective, by the way, showing you that those, let's say, music and art, and that can really help you to be successful in your career as well.
It's in our soul, honestly. This is like all art, and it's present in us. Like if you think about it, in ancient times, how did people communicate with each other? They were drawing on the walls, and this is how we knew about history.
You're right.
So this isn't something that we're supposed to be like, especially for parents. We're not supposed to telling your kids that, no, you're not supposed to focus on this because I want you to be a doctor or an engineer. Who said that maybe a football player is no more successful than a doctor? Who's defining even these scales for us? We're not supposed to do that, and especially at this time. Back in time, like people would be like embarrassed if their kids were, let's just say, were singers. But nowadays, it's completely different. So we should embrace this, honestly. Like if our kids are talented in something, we should embrace it, and we should have them develop that the seed that they have in them. It's a talent, and let us have it grow. We can help them by having them enter different courses. For example, let's just talk about music. If let's just say that my daughter is interested in music, I will have her participate in some courses that will, of course, I'm not going to have her get away from that. I will have her practice that and with the things that she's passionate about. So it's not always education. It's always, if you think about it, well, if the whole world is full of football, with doctors and engineers, who's going to be the football player? Who's going to be the musician? Who's going to be, what other careers do we have that are interesting to have? Like a chef, for
Footballers.
example. Who's
Okay,
going to be a
chefs.
chef, right?
Yeah,
So
you're
we're
right.
supposed to have all of these people go and follow their dreams and their passions. We cannot just stop the people from doing what they love doing, honestly.
Now, you remind me with a very critical question. I dealt with that. It was an argumentative aspect. The question says, should footballers be paid a lot since they are doing something special, or no, because their job is as normal as others? Unfortunately, no, the majority of the answers say that no, but we usually think of doctors, teachers, engineers. Why the footballers? Right, but also the footballer is a talented person.
It is.
In addition to all of that, when we talked about the curriculum and the facilities and the methodologies of teaching, at the end, each facilitator needs to test the comprehensive level of his or her students. Between two brackets, I mean the evaluation. Now, a part of the plan, or the good or the well-prepared plan, let me call it in this way, a teacher should specify in advance that what are the ways that he or she is supposed to use to check the success, or the ways that he can measure the success of his or her students. So tests or examinations or assessments, as we usually call. For me, I mean, even this point needs a kind of change,
Definitely.
improve, develop, because unfortunately we can see that some schools are still dealing with the traditional way of testing their students. That is, having a one unified exam given to all of the students at the same time, neglecting the things that you mentioned before that.
The students' effort, where did that go, right?
Exactly. And the ways that students prefer to learn. You mentioned that some of them prefer to listen, others prefer to read, others prefer to watch. Also, we have something we call kinesthetic. Those students, like, I mean, to
Action,
move.
right?
Actions, you're right.
Hands-on.
So, I mean, it might be a bit difficult, or let's say critical, for our new generation teaching staff that, all right, how can I apply all of this when it comes to assessment, while I think also we have different, training programs or sessions that can teach you what are the good ways of assessing your students or testing your students. You can test your students every lesson, even if you don't do that impractical.
Correct.
But as a successful facilitator, you can now differentiate. And when it comes to differentiate, it means that you know how to design your assessment. I myself, when I try to assess my students, I never follow the only traditional way, which is the written task. You can use, the presentations. You can use the comprehensive ways, exchanging thoughts and ideas.
Projects.
Having a kind of various ways to listen to various perspectives. Projects, as you mentioned. Now, evaluation, when it comes to you as a teacher, what do you think of the evaluation ways that we are using now, and which one that you personally prefer to test your students? I shared mine. I said I don't have one, specific one way. Yes.
Let me tell you something, and you might be surprised. Can you believe that I failed in English when I was in grade 4?
You're kidding me.
I'm serious.
Okay.
Do you know why I failed?
I'm so eager to know the reason.
Because I didn't know what to do in the exam.
Okay.
All the expectations were not clear to me. I didn't know. I saw that even back then, the teacher wrote all the questions on the board. You're supposed to copy them. And then what? I didn't even know anything because I was not given the criteria. I didn't know based on what I was going to be assessed. So Nowadays, a lot of students, honestly, we think that the students know what we're assessing them upon, but they don't know. We need to be clear with them. So, when I give my students assessments, before I give them anything, I let them know how they're going to be assessed. The points. This is, if you do it to this point, this is what you're going to get. The other question, if this is what you're able to do, this is what you're going to get. So I put my expectations clear for them. They know what to do, and then I give them the assessment.
I do agree with this idea. That
So-
will be really practical. But sharing what they are going to be assessed with in advance in order to get them well prepared for that. Yes.
So yeah, you're supposed to have a criteria. So even when you're having that criteria ready, when the student asks you why I got, for example, 2, why my friend got 4, you have it explained in the criteria why they're getting the specific mark. And as for assessments, I truly believe in pre-assessments.
All right. Pre-assessment, that's a very important point. To what extent do you think the pre-assessment will be beneficial for different types of students?
It's very beneficial for us, a teacher, to know exactly what your students know about the topic that you're about to explain or the whole unit that you're explaining. If you know your students and how much they know about the topic and what they're curious about, what they want to know about the topic, I think you have walked half of the way, and the rest is just going to be easy for you because then you already know what they know. You're just going to be building up on their knowledge. You don't need to
Exactly.
waste your time on things that they already know. So pre-assessment is very important. And for us, we're supposed to be assessing the students on daily basis. So like you mentioned earlier, I don't have to have a quiz or an exam paper.
No, it
with
doesn't
me.
matter to be in this way. You're right.
They can be working in a project, and I can just assess the students based on observation.
Sure.
So the students is working, I can write notes for myself that the students was doing this and that, and they succeeded. Or maybe I overheard a student explaining a very complex topic to their classmates, and that's an anecdote for me. Okay, I understand that the students know about this topic. So you can assess them on daily basis. You don't have to assess them on a final exam. So what you're telling the students is that, and believe it or not, I was one of those students. I always I did not, I wasn't putting any effort into my education in the, I'm talking about in the beginning of school year, middle school, because I knew it wasn't gonna do me anything. And back in my time, we had the final exam was upon 100 marks, and that's what mattered. So especially in math, I was a little bit lazy in math. I wasn't really much listening to the teacher. I wasn't paying attention because I was like, you know what? When it's a final exam, that's when I'm gonna study, and I'll just make sure that I'll have 50 to pass, and that's it. And it's not supposed to be that way. You're just teaching the students that exam, it's what I'm preparing you only for that exam. You're not even going to need these numbers in your life. You don't even need to add or subtract.
Never.
Believe it or not, I still do not know the multiplication. I don't know the timetable. I do know
That's another strange point, by the way.
It's because, I don't know why. Math was a little bit hard for me when I was in the primary school and even in the middle school. Not primary school, middle school. But I'm telling you, because I knew it. At the end of the day, my marks, the grades, I was going to be assessed on the final exam.
I see.
My effort was not measurable. My effort was not counted at all. So if I participate or not, it's just going to be the final assessment. So if you think about it, this is a very weak thing in education. You shouldn't have your student that way. You should have your students participate every single day, and they should be assessed on a daily basis. For you, in order for you to move on to next, the concept that you're teaching, you need to make sure that your students all understood, right? And something else, honestly, let's just say that you are in a public school, 12th grader, and you're having your final exams, Wizari as we call, and suddenly you had a bad day. Something happened in your family. Maybe, God forbid, a family member died. What's going to happen? That's going to determine your whole future.
Of course, it'll be a disaster for the test taker.
Right? So I think that the whole system is I think the students in the abroad, the way for them to apply for universities, they write letters to the universities showing their interest in the
Exactly.
universities, and they go on
Personal
they
statements,
go on
sometimes they prefer to
interviews.
call
Yeah.
it. You're right.
So I don't know honestly how much it's going to take for us to get to that level, but hopefully, just hopefully that one day we're going to have students that are in the med school because they love being med students, because they love to have surgeries, for example, not just because their parents wanted that, or not just because if they feel like, I'm successful because I'm a doctor. That's not how it works.
No,
And
it doesn't work in this way. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, the evaluation system need to be revolutionized. I mean, to have a kind of big change, especially when it comes to following the traditional way of testing or assessing. See, for instance, now, when it comes to 12th graders, there is another point that I usually, think of it carefully, and because I did also the same when I was in that grade. Teachers might tell you that, all right, I want you to focus on that point because usually it is going to be assessed in the upcoming year. This means that teachers are following the same, let's say, question bank of the previous teachers to use them to assess the students. While I remember there was another good facilitator or teacher. He told me that every year, when it comes to the end of the academic year, I got all of my question banks and I tried to burn them. That was very strange. And when I asked that teacher, why do you do that? So he said, because, in the next academic year, when I want to create a new assessment, I will be forced to use my mentality and my creativity to create a new idea. He said, okay, imagine that if I came home one day and I was really exhausted and tired, and I had to create a new question bank for my students. In this case, he said, then, because I'm tired, I'm going to go to the bookshelf and pick one of the old question bank and I'm going to apply it and use it. So he said, I want to avoid doing this. I want to be up to date, creative, based on the students' needs, as you mentioned.
That's how
and
it's supposed to be
remember,
like.
Differentiation is very important. When I assess my students, please, we need to assess them based on their needs, not based on the curriculum. Yes, the curriculum is your guide, but you as a facilitator think that how would you design that task for student A and student B who are in different levels? So evaluation, yes, needs to be revolutionized. I think you agree with this idea, right?
Definitely.
Yes.
Having modified exams for different type of people, for different types of students, especially with the special needs, it's important. Some people, some students, when they see words, they don't actually see words, but when they see a picture, that's an enhancer for them. They understand right away. So why not helping them? Why not? It's our job. I think teaching is the most sacred job in the whole world.
It is.
Because honestly, we're defining the next generation and how they're going to be like. So why don't we just do it in the most positive way? Let's keep ourselves up to date with teaching methodology, as you mentioned before.
Exactly.
And let's just rock. And most of the teachers who decided to be teachers, I think it's because they're passionate about teaching.
That's an important idea, that you need to love what you do. So in this case, you will do a great job or great work. Yeah. Now, if I want to close this session or recap that one, we need to share at least, one or two pieces of advice with the followers, or the one who is interested in watching that one, or the ones who think that they're really targeted in this broadcast. From my side, I say that you as a facilitator or as a teacher, because you decided to be a teacher, remember that you are someone who is going to introduce the main ways for the learners to be successful. Again, I'm sort of going to focus on this. You might, accuse me of repeating this word a lot, but you need to facilitate the way for your learners. First of all, think of how do you plan well before you enter your classroom.
Definitely.
Education is not an easy concept, as I mentioned before. It's really complicated. So planning needs a kind of good commitment, and good commitment leads to a success, and that's what we need. So all the points that we mentioned lie in these three terms. I'm sorry, that's not, something that I create. I usually see these three terms when I go here in Doha. I saw that on the bridges. I guess it's one of the construction groups, use that one.
Yeah.
You need to plan, then you need to have good commitment.
Yeah.
Then you will achieve a good success
Absolutely.
in your job. What about you?
I think the same, honestly. And that's when they say great minds speak alike. I think that's what the
Good.
quote is.
Yeah, great mind, things alike. Good,
Things
wonderful.
think alike. So definitely, if you're a facilitator, as Mr. Mataz has mentioned, we're not using the word teacher.
Yep.
Facilitators, as a facilitator, you just facilitate the lesson. Of course, you're supposed to know of course, you need to know about what you're representing to the students.
Sure.
But what's important is that prepare some activities for your students. Make your lessons loud. I think any administrator would agree with this. Anytime they walk in a classroom and the students are working, even if they're loud, that's when the education is happening. That's when the learning is happening. That's when the students are actually interested. That's why they're loud. We're not supposed to having the students always sitting down, being quiet, Q&A for the end. Trust me, if the lesson is that long and you took all the time to read, all the time to address the lesson, at the end, even if I have a question, I'm not going to answer you because I know the whole crowd want to leave the room right now. So even people who have questions, they're not going to ask their questions because they know how boring it is, and they don't want to be the hated people in that room. They want to leave fast. So try to just make sure that your lessons are well targeted with your students' need. Definitely think about your students' learning abilities. Think about how to have more activities, whether they're project. You can do the simplest thing. Even if you don't have the resources and the tools, you can just have the students debate, talk to each other, learn from each other. And you can have them have their answers.
Yeah, sure.
This is for the teachers, facilitators' perspective. As for the students, I believe that if they just put a little bit of effort, they're also going to succeed. So we only need good facilitator, curriculum, and a good student.
Exactly.
These are the main component of a good education.
I do agree with
And
this.
if we have this, I believe we can succeed. We've done it before. We're going to keep doing it. We just need to get ourselves updated.
And hopefully we can see that, practically done one
Definitely.
day. That was brilliant, by the way. So, as Mrs. Rapp mentioned, you guys have a kind of steps to do. Remember that your job is not easy, and we do believe in that. But at the same time, remember that Rome was not built in a day. So you have to work hard. Think of how to be smart, not only a hard worker. My speech is given to the facilitators and the students at the same time. I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining this podcast.
Thank you so much.
I
It's
can
an
say
honor.
that I also learned a lot from your side.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully we can try to shed light on some other relevant points concerning education, because we mentioned at the beginning that education is a very deep concept.
It is.
So thank you very much again.
Thank you so much
And
for
thanks
having
for
me.
watching and following this podcast. Hopefully you learned something beneficial, you got something new. We can't wait to see your reactions, your comments, so we can exchange our thoughts and ideas, because, we learn from each other. There is no one perfect. Thanks a lot, and hopefully we can see you in an upcoming podcast. See you then.